Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Trump's trade war with China appears to be escalating. The Chinese government announced plans to match the president's tariffs on Chinese goods with import levies on American soybeans, cars and planes. Wall Street doesn't much like it. The Dow Jones plunged this morning on the news. But Trump's old fans do. Steve Bannon, one-time chief advisor at the White House, told him, "To hell with Wall Street. It's time someone stood up to them, and Donald Trump is the perfect guy to do it." What does it all mean for the price of goods and the future goodwill of the nations? Here's Helen Thomas.
China has form when it comes to putting up barriers against potential incursions. Today's defence, a list of 106 US products threatened with tariffs. Its response to the economic raid planned by another regime keen on building walls.
Build that wall, build that wall, build that wall.
President Trump has long been sceptical of the consensus that says more trade, freer trade, benefits all countries. His latest salvo was prompted, the US said, by concerns that China uses industrial policy or even espionage to obtain important US technology. His tariffs threat covered 1,300 products, from medical equipment to dishwashers, TV cameras to grenades. The Chinese retaliated with their roster that included aircraft and soybeans, the largest US exports to China. Agriculture and manufactured products designed to hit hard in the Trump heartland. 1947, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. Could the current confrontation mean the end of decades of broad agreement on a rules-based trading system? US stock markets plunged before rebounding sharply. But this tit-for-tat standoff is exactly what economists fear, rattling businesses and pushing up prices for consumers. The root cause is the president's preoccupation with the US's trade deficit with China. To Mr. Trump's mercantilist view of the world, that figure is a defeat, a sign of weakness. Others disagree.
If you talk to economists, they will pretty much tell you that the trade deficit is fairly irrelevant in measuring whether America is a successful economy or an unsuccessful economy. What Donald Trump appears to have done, there are many challenges with doing business in China. The real question is this going to solve those economic challenges? Or, and this is what I think is probably going through the mind of Donald Trump, is he using this as an instrument to put pressure on China to then relax in some of these other areas that are real and concrete challenges with doing business with China?
Is this just another Trump negotiation, one that results, say, in barriers coming down for US firms doing business in China? And what damage could be done to global commitment to free trade in the meantime?
Helen Thomas there. Well, Michael Froman served as the US trade representative from 2013 to 2017. He joins us from Washington, D.C. Ambassador Froman, good to have you on the programme. Do you think this is maybe a necessary connection, that we have now grown up with a full sense of how little goods crossed, how cheap labour is overseas? This is the correction we always had coming.
Well, I don't know whether it's really a necessary correction. I think it does underscore just how dependent we all are on trade, not just as consumers, where there's been enormous benefits, but also as producers, as workers in downstream industries that rely on inputs coming from abroad for the production that we produce, and as farmers and ranchers having markets for our products. And so the U.S. is less dependent on trade than a lot of other countries because we're such a big internal market. But even here, I think people are really feeling the impact.
And globalization has become, if you like, unfashionable. Whether you're Bernie Sanders on the left or you're Donald Trump on the right, people are thinking it's time to try something new, right?
Well, you know, it's interesting. There's been a big debate, and there should be a debate about globalization and what the appropriate response of governments and societies is to that in each case. In the United States, for example, we have not done a particularly good job of preparing our people to succeed in a rapidly changing economy or to help individuals or communities that are adversely affected by change. Most of that change comes from technology. Most economists will tell you that 80% of the effect on wages and jobs come from technology and automation. Maybe some part of the remaining 20% comes from globalization. But in terms of how we deal with that challenge, particularly with new technological challenges ahead, that to me is the real issue.
But it still leaves you with the question of how you deal with a country like China. I'm wondering whether you think, looking back, Obama or, you know, the Democrat before him, Bill Clinton, with most favored nation status, that didn't really get you anywhere, did it?
Well, I think the problems that China poses to the international trading system are real. And I think it's been high on the agenda of every president, Republican and Democrat alike, for the last 20, 30 years, ever since we saw the opening of China. We've tried through a number of mechanisms using the World Trade Organization, litigating where we found that China to be violating the WTO commitments. In the Obama administration, we brought 26 cases to the WTO, 16 of them against China. We won every case that we brought that went to conclusion. That's certainly not enough. There still is work to be done. And I think the Trump administration is right to focus on these issues. The question is, will their tactics result in the desired outcome?
And what do you think?
Well, I think it's tough to see. I think if these are steps to increase negotiating leverage, as a negotiator, the first thing you need to know is what is it you're trying to achieve in the end game, and what's the process to get there? What are the off-ramps to avoid being self-destructive? And I don't think we see that yet coming from the administration. There seems to be a debate about whether we're really seeking fundamental changes in China's policies and practices, including an industrial policy, which some people, I think, view as predatory, or whether we just want to see the bilateral trade deficit be reduced by $100 billion a year. I think China would welcome a chance to negotiate over how many planes they should buy or how many soybeans they should buy, provided the United States left them alone on their industrial policy, but I'm not sure that is in our national interest in the long run.
Michael Froman, good to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.